Hi guys, I hope you're well. I know it's been a while since I've made a video. Jesus put it on my heart earlier today to talk about something that I've talked about before in some of my videos, about an experience that I had that was life-changing to where I almost died, and Jesus used it to get my attention. I want to talk about it because it's sobering, and I don't forget what God did for me. I don't forget how Jesus saved my life, and I want to just continue to share this testimony with people to help enlighten people to truth and to awaken people, to get them to cry out to Jesus and to realize that He is real, that He is a God who cares and a God who will answer anybody who's in distress, who sincerely needs to hear from Him. Like, He knows how to get a person's attention. He knows how to comfort a person in spirit and in truth in the perfect way that only that person and God can understand. So, like, God is super deep in that way, you guys. But again, I just wanted to share this experience, and I'll just kind of make this short. I'll just kind of pop out videos however God leads me. But yeah, these thoughts and just these memories, that's what they are, they're memories. They're just etched on my mind and heart, and I just know that it's a continual testimony that I need to keep sharing with people, however and whenever God tells me. So I'm just going to tell you guys about a time when Jesus showed up in a moment where He really showed me compassion and mercy and grace in a moment that I really, truly did not deserve it. But that's how deep and loving God is. There's one time I was 15 years old. I was in a car full of other children who were like 15, 16, and maybe 17 years old. And we were driving this little car. And I won't get into all the details, but I wasn't driving, I was in the back seat, and there was a 15-year-old girl who was driving, and she was playing with the steering wheel, swerving on a rocky road, and so we started to flip, like we started to roll. We rolled maybe, I honestly don't know how many times, I want to guess like 3 or 4. I'll never know the answer to that, I guess, but what happened during that time, it felt probably like a minute or two, honestly. It felt like time slowed down, and right as soon as we started to turn over, I was crying out to God. Like, I was literally saying, Jesus, Jesus, you know, I was like crying out His name, screaming His name. I would do that now, but I don't want to like disturb the neighbors, but I screamed God's name, and I was saying, Jesus, Jesus, help me, Jesus, and that literally takes me like a few seconds, like you just heard, but it felt like that took 2 minutes, and while I screamed His name and cried out to Him, He showed up. It was like I felt like I was being held up. Everything was spinning around me, and I don't know how to explain it, but God communicated to me in that moment that I was going to be okay. And Jesus, I felt Him holding me, like in the palm of His hand, and I saw a bright white light as these things are spinning around me, because I was being held up. I honestly don't feel like I even flipped. I know that may sound strange and not scientific to whoever, but it's truth. Like, it's not like my hair is messed up. I didn't have any of this whiplash or any like jerks of the neck going about. I was held still and held up, and the car was flipping around me. So in that moment, I knew that God had just saved me. And I get out of the car, where like all of us young teenagers are in shock. We get out of the car, and I'm looking at this vehicle, and it's this little beaten up rabbit, okay? And it's upside down, and the wheels are still spinning, and the engine is still on, and I'm shaking like a leaf, okay? And I just looked at this big hunk of metal that could have crushed me like a aluminum can. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I mean, it was crushed in areas, and the windows were popped out and shattered in some areas, and everything just, it was a mess. Everything was everywhere, you know what I mean? And I should mention that we were driving around earlier that night. We had like a case of beer or something, so there were like beer bottles that were unopened that were just like everywhere. It was a mess. But at that time I wasn't like buzzed, or I hadn't been drinking for hours. So this isn't something I imagined or made up. This is something that really did happen, and it's the reality of it's just truth. And in that moment, I'm looking at this car like it's an aluminum can that, you know, like I said, I could have easily been crushed. And, you know, my friends were telling me at the time, like, they were kind of laughing at me, you know, you were crying out to God, and, oh, Jesus. And I said, well, yeah, look at me. There's no scratches on me, you guys. And there wasn't. I didn't have anything wrong with me. And I remember going away from that wreck, so thankful to still be alive. Like, God put these thoughts in my mind that allowed me to know that He received the glory. That it's His glory, His honor, His doing. The reason why I'm even still alive. And that's a lot for a 15-year-old to really take in. I've had a lot of encounters like this. Several wrecks and an emergency plane landing, which I'll make other videos if God leads me. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how it's like I saw my life. You hear people say that. I saw my life flash before my eyes. Well, it is like that. It's kind of like, in that moment when God was holding me up, He let me know, like we were communicating. He was telling me the things that were important in my life, and the things that He was disappointed in me, in the things that I was doing, because I was drinking and I was hanging out with people that were bad influence, and I was influencing other people, and to do evil and wicked and just to be bad, right? To do sin. And He really like woke me up in that moment, and I knew, my conscience knew right away that I had been sinning all night, that God didn't have to let me live. I knew that I deserved to get that wake-up call. That's really what it was communicated to me. It's like God, like He was correcting me, and at the same time He was showing me love, compassion, mercy, and grace. And I walked away with some of the most deep thoughts I'd ever had in my entire life for the first time in that moment. I was meditating. I was thinking about life. I was thinking about eternity. I was thinking about my purpose. I was thinking about those whom I love, and just how in an instant everything could be taken away from me, and I wouldn't have been able to express how much I loved my loved ones. Like, I knew in that moment that that could have been it for me, because there were actually teenagers around that time who had died in alcohol-related type accidents, even people I knew around my age. So I could have been one of them, you know what I'm saying? And that, like, that wisdom and that knowledge and that fear of God just jumped in me instantly after this experience, and I was more awake and more aware to the seriousness of life and what matters and eternity. And I'm not saying that I completely gave my life to Jesus at that moment, because I was bullheaded. I didn't, you guys, I didn't. But it did get me to focus on so many things in that time, to refocus my priorities and my attention and my to not be so distracted by things that didn't matter. Like, I stopped doing that for a while. In other words, like, I got back into alcoholism, like, in my 20s. But around that time, yeah, I stopped drinking around that time. And I didn't hang out with those people anymore. And I'm taking accountability for my sin. So I'm not blaming them. But God was, like, showing me. He was trying to guide me in the path of life and truth, and the way that He wanted me to go, that was safe and that was righteous. So He knows how to get people's attention. He really does, if people sit back and if they listen and they really take in their surroundings and ask God, like, what's going on in their life, they'll know. Like, I didn't have to say, what was that about? Like, God communicated it to me. I just knew. Like, the conscience knows when it's being corrected, when it's sinning, when it's doing evil. And I just knew that I was being corrected by God. And it was a wake-up call. So, I mean, if God can do that to a 15-year-old, He's doing that to anybody who can try and pay attention. Like, He's going to use those type of moments, is what I mean, to get the attention of a person's heart, to really get them to cry out to Him, so that they can start walking in His will and understand His ways, if they'll just cling to Him and remain in Him. So anyways, this was on my heart, and I wanted to share it. I felt God telling me to share it. So, yeah, God is a real God. He's very real. He's spirit, but he's everywhere, you guys. He's more real than this video. I know that sounds strange, but you can see me, you can hear me talk. We can't necessarily see God, but he is there, and he's more real than you can even imagine. So I just want to encourage you to cry out to Jesus Christ. He loves you. He cares for you. Give your life to him. Turn away from sin, and God will have mercy and compassion on you, and show mercy and compassion and forgiveness to others in the same way that God shows you. He's such a good Jesus. He's a good God. God bless.